Right.
0 calories. Go ahead and get started. Our topic for today is kind of a recap of the strategic planning. As you guys always know, we send a resolution to the town board every year, sometime between now and December, to have them approve our priorities this year. Our job is easier, it's already done.
Yeah, yay.
But that'll be what we'll work on after this meeting, after we go over everything.
Sarah, in that summary that you'll be developing of the strategic planning meeting, would you consider including all of the, priority projects that everybody talked about, so that we could take a look at, what some others are thinking besides ourselves? I know that we'll be concentrating on the 5 that, that we'll be sending to the town for approval to work on, but there's, some of these things overlap each other. That's what I'm thinking about. Some of the that I noticed anyway, we noticed in our committee that things were overlapping. So,
Yeah.
and wondering how we were going to track that. We also talked in our committee about having some kind of a tracking, protocol, so that when we do accomplish something, we have it, we have it on a record. Not, I know that we do this when we have our individual meetings. We ask people to come in and give us some uptake, but there's nothing really that the residents can review as far as, what's been accomplished as we go along. That's what I.
So when we're working on the comp plan, you remember when for each goal, we have the measurables?
Yes.
So those are things we can revisit. I don't know how often that'll be. Maybe for some of them, it won't be every year, but maybe for some of them it will. So we'll have a way to measure those. And that can be a way for us to see, in a year or two, if we're successful with, taking on these action steps. But to your first question about what's going to end up on the resolution, I mean, that's really why we did that last week, right? So I don't think that everything that got orange stickers from the individuals is going to make it on the resolution as far as a priority. No. It'll be those
absolutely. I'm not talking about for the resolution. I'm just talking about for our update.
Right. So yes. So Shauna has all of those, and she just stepped out, but I think she'd agree. So we already talked about that we're developing a spreadsheet of all of those, action items, the priority action items. I think there was 51. And we're gonna write like how many of the orange dots were on those sheets for each one, because we collected all those sheets from the table. So I don't know if the spreadsheet's done yet. I know the development office is putting it together, but so we will have that, and we'll be able to look at it.
Oh, that'll be great, because one of the things, like I say, one of the recommendations or one of the goals, and I forget, in the town operations, and which our committee wholeheartedly we voted for as one of our priorities, was the update that would be available to the residents. So that's why I'm asking. It just seems like, since you're just starting to do all this kind of stuff, we should start thinking about how we can keep track on a regular basis of the progress of at least our first 5, but also, as we move forward. It's mainly for, well, I'll tell you, the people in our committee, they didn't know what the CIC was really doing and hadn't been doing for the last few years. So that was why we were particularly interested in that.
Okay. Shauna, when you stepped out, she was asking about the priority items that did not make it about 5, and I said that we're going to have a spreadsheet.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, because those are very important.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Not necessarily gonna be on the resolution that goes to the town board.
Right, but we will summarize them and distribute them. Yeah.
And then also she was talking about how we measure how well the town is doing on the 5 priority items or any of the other items, and that's where the measurables can come into play. And I mentioned that some of them are not something you do every year, but some of them could be, so that we'll keep track of those.
Sounds good.
Sorry, just writing a note. Okay. Shauna, I don't know if you had a plan for talking about strategic planning, but do you mind if I talk about the survey?
Oh, please do.
Yeah.
And thank you, everyone who filled that out. That was invaluable information for us.
So you guys know, we sent out a survey after the strategic planning, and it was more about, the event in general, just so we know about event planning in the future, if we do this again next year, how to do it, did it work out? And then also the questions about the activities we did. And I won't open it up and go through every question, that would take too long. But in general, we had, I think, 14 people filled out the survey, so roughly maybe half-ish of the people who came. Not great, but at least we got some feedback.
That's actually a pretty good response.
Yeah.
For a survey.
Yes.
Actually,
Anything over 30% is good.
So
I was really happy with
the
that.
questions about the event itself, like the venue, the location, people seemed pleased with where it was, generally happy with the food, that we had food. One comment I expected and received is that, it was hard to hear. It was hard to hear, it was hard to talk in there because it
It
got
was
noisy.
hard.
If we did it again, we'd do a microphone and a speaker. But people were generally happy with that. And then also it was nice to see that the activities we planned, people felt that it worked well to narrow down the priorities, and they felt it was successful overall, which is nice because we weren't sure if people were happy with it.
Included in were invitees included who were on the original committee that worked on it with Eric?
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I sent the survey to the people who didn't come. I sent it to the entire list of invitees because one of our first questions was, did you go? If not, why? And really only 2 people made a comment, or one comment that evening meetings were tough. But if we'd held it during the day, I imagine we would have received comments that daytime meetings were tough. So, you expect to get a few comments like that. We asked if it was too short or too long or just right, and most people said that it was just right. One person said it was too long, one person said it was too short, but the rest said it was
Interesting thing for me, at my table, across from me was a guy, I can't remember his name, I'm sorry, but he said he was on the CIC. I've never seen the guy.
That was Dick McCall.
Mackay, he says Mackay.
He lives out of Middle Cheshire Road.
Yeah,
Right.
he had expressed interest, reminds me, I was gonna reach out.
Yeah, that's right. We talked about that.
I apparently didn't.
Glad you asked about that.
That's it. Yeah, thanks for asking.
He, had contacted me or Eric a few years ago when we had advertised to the public about joining the CIC, and asked questions, asked about it. So we invited him to come to a couple meetings, and then I never heard from him again. I didn't really understand if he wanted to be on the CIC or if he just wanted to come. So the invitation was there. I said, come, feel it out. If you want to join, let us know. And I never heard from him again. So I think he had corresponded with Eric a little bit during the comp plan stuff, which is probably why we got invited, because he was on that group. But he did show up. So I told Doug last week and forgot. So maybe I'd reach out, because he came and maybe he'd like to think about it again. So, and I do remember he came to a couple of Zoom meetings last year during 2020. And he had some input, so anyone who comes to a meeting and provides some feedback, that's hard to get.
You invite everybody on all the committees and
Yes.
teams.
Yeah. Yeah, it went out to about 100 email addresses.
Because not everybody was a town of Canandaigua resident.
But they don't have to be, we don't require that for our committees or project teams. Just for us.
One of the things that I ran into at my table was, we talk about the action items, and in here, when we're in the moment, we're like, oh, that's crystal clear, I know exactly what that means. And then I was sitting there at the table, and I was sitting with a group that, like, for instance, Chuck Euler was at my table, and there are others that are involved and engaged. And we got to a couple of these action steps, and we're like, well, what in the world did that mean? And and I'll give you one specific example. I had most of our table, we were having a discussion about there's an action step, and our table ended up voting for it as one of the things on recreation. And the consensus of my table was, well, Lindsay does a great job, let's put a sticker on that. When then I saw Mark's email like a day or two later, and then I remembered, oh, that's not what we were talking about, right? So I don't know how you ever get around that, but it's just part of it, and we continue to make improvements as we can.
It's funny, because, we were all very, very involved in it for months, going through each action item, and then the individual committees went through their own action items, and they all decided, these are great, this is what we want, and it makes sense. But then you leave it alone for 8 months and come back, and it sounds a little different. Yeah, there were a couple I was like, why did you say it that way? And a couple, we talked about this, they're done.
Right.
That weren't at the time.
We did too, we discussed that areas.
That's not a bad thing.
No, and then the interpretation, the one about someone to do Parks and Recreation coordinator position, and I work with Lindsay, so I'm like, well, we've already hired that person, so that's already done. But then Mark McNeil from the Parks and Rec Committee said, but you could interpret it as a dedicated Parks and Recreation person who's not also doing HR, or maybe someone who has a background in recreation. So they still felt like, yes, but you could consider this as a different position or an additional person or something to work on recreation. So it depends on where you're coming from, how you might see some of those action items. Anyway, does anybody have anything else they noticed from the night, or questions about it, or things you noticed from your table group?
I think the group that I was with 2 other fellows, and it was really a great group. I mean, feedback from the different backgrounds that were coming in. You mentioned how it gets interpreted, through it all. And we started out one way and ended up with something completely different, at the end. But I enjoyed it.
I thought it was an interesting exercise.
Yeah.
And, you had at least 4 or 5 different views on where you should go, and interpretations of some of the goals too. But I think it is probably the only way to make a decision on what goals to address. I can't imagine. One person should not be the sole decider of where we're going to go for the next year. It needs a change.
Does anyone have any comments on how we did the tables? We made sure that there wasn't more than one member from any committee or team at a table, or tried to anyway.
Yeah.
Except for these guys. because you guys sit on other committees.
Yeah, we had a hard time splitting you all
Kinda
up.
double But, you know, because the other way you could have done it is, you have a table that's planning board, and you have a table that's CIC members, and you have a table that's zoning board or town board, but
No,
we didn't want to do that. We thought it would be better to
It's good
mix
to
it.
mix it up.
better to do it the way you did.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think the conversations may have been different. If the tables had been set up different. Thoughts?
Yeah, we were just thrilled that some rose to the top the way they did. We had 3 other activities planned in case they didn't. So it was really, really nice to see that commonality. It
Yeah,
really
I
was.
was, before leading up to it, I wasn't sure how fast the group would come to a consensus.
Mm-hmm.
And if after the first activity, it would be kind of, spread out among all the goals. But, and so, yeah, we had 3 other.
We did have
activities
3.
planned,
Yeah,
And we didn't use them.
yeah, so it was great.
So it would be great if we could get our poster here in the room updated now to
Yeah.
reflect our new stuff so that we could top of mind awareness.
Mhm.
Yeah, and that's the old,
Yeah, that's the old goals, I know.
the
That's fine.
old goals.
The other thing is, there was a gentleman who, Mark Tolbert, who lives over off of 364, he's a town of Canandaigua resident. He's wanting to get more engaged, and he just wasn't able to come this morning. I don't think he's on the call, is he? He's talking about joining by Zoom, but he made a comment to me. He said that he's read the 2011 update, and then he's read the new comp plan. He said he went through it in its entirety. He's felt like there was a lot of similarity between the two. And then he was looking at the action steps, the top five that came out from the strategic planning session. And he said that one of the things that he thinks, and I know we've run into this, is that there sometimes is conflict within our own documents. Like, for instance, in his opinion, now this is where you really get into interpretation, right? But in his opinion, Canandaigua Shores project, that property should be preserved for open space protection, right? Versus housing, but yet it's in the MUO. So it's like the balance, right? What do you do, or how do you figure it out when you have conflicts for specific areas? So he raised that point. It's an interesting point. Just something we need to keep in mind.
There's always gonna be that conflict.
Right.
I think if it's in the growth mode, it's established, maybe.
Yeah, it's an established growth mode, so it's let the process unfold.
But doing things like what we talked about with ordinance the other day, with the view shed, that would further put some additional constraints on lands where we are intentionally trying to conserve that land, help protect the natural resources.
Look back to the balance.
Mhm.
Shauna, do you have anything?
I don't. I think we've gone over everything. For the rest of the year, are we going to use the schedule that we have? I guess that was my question, is how we're going to move into 22.
When will the resolution be presented to the town board, this next meeting?
I would guess either the next one or in November. Sorry, I'm just gonna open this again. So. So these are the goals we came up with. It was probably around July when we really hammered out the rest of them. Sorry, not goals, topics. Today's strategic planning, and considering that it's pretty solidly formalized, we probably don't need to do it again in November. Typically, we have a harder time narrowing it down in the other years that we didn't make it to a strategic planning meeting. And it's taken a couple meetings, but I don't know if you guys are in agreement, we could do something else on that November 2 meeting. The next meeting, October 19th, is probably a good topic and fairly timely, especially the Auburn Trail. And then the other ones are probably still worth talking about. You know, in other years, we typically try to talk about everything twice and spacing out about 6 months. And we've always put the parks stuff kind of in the spring and the fall, so before their busy season, and then recap for after the busy season. But I mean, obviously we're up for change if we need it.
Now on November 2nd, that's election day, right?
Yeah, we usually hold it anyway. Everybody always votes to hold the meeting anyway, but we always ask.
What's MCRC?
So Middle Cheshire Road Active Transportation Plan, that's the one that was acknowledged, accepted, whatever you want to say, back in the spring. It has sat dormant since then, so I think it's probably a good idea to talk about it. There's a lot of projects in it, different. If you look at it as pieces, you know, sections, and it's a lot of projects, or it's one ginormous project.
Where is the Auburn Trail?
So the Auburn Trail in the town of Canandaigua is basically just the gaps that haven't been filled in yet on the larger Auburn Trail that goes from Pittsburgh to Ontario Pathways in the city of Canandaigua. And our section begins at Canandaigua Town Line, Farmington Town Line Road, over where they've done all the work. That's kind of the southern terminus right now, with the work Farmington did on it. And then our section runs from there south through most likely the parcel west of 332 behind all the parcels that are along 332. It's owned by the Genecos, the water line work that's gonna go. The idea right now is to
But
put it
it
on
doesn't
top.
exist, right?
No, but we're working.
Okay, because,
Well, it exists in all the other municipalities, just
Yeah.
not.
yeah, it ends in the backyard of one of the Geneco warehouses. 332, yes, that was.
Well, right now it loops around, there's a loop, so it comes down Town Line Road, and then it goes up past Creekview Apartments, and then it loops back around on itself, and then connects back and then goes, so it actually, for my development, I can,
I'm saying from Farmington
Yep.
south, do we have a connector with the? Can I go from Victor to the airport on the?
no.
No.
You can go to Town Line Road, but
Yeah,
that's
that's
it.
it.
Okay,
And the
And then you
proposed,
can go from Outhouse Park up to the airport, basically on
yeah,
it, right?
right, so we got a big gap.
And then, right, yeah.
But you'll eventually be able to go from Victor to the airport, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
we'll be able to go all the way down.
All the
to
way
the
down.
pathways.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, yes, using the existing city sidewalk system, but there will be a connection.
Trail, anyway, that bikes from Farmington north is just lovely.
Yes.
It's great.
It's just
It's perfect.
unbelievable, and it's too bad we don't, I guess it's up to Geneco and the water line to have.
Well, we've got agreements on all that. We've been working on all that for years. The challenge is the wetlands on Brickyard Road, the expense. It's about a $3 million project to cross that section. Yeah, so we can get into that more, but we've been doing a lot of work the last couple of years on the Auburn Trail. We've got a lot of stuff moving on that. It's a lot of moving pieces with a lot of different landowners, but we've got a lot of the pieces are starting to come together. Puzzle is starting to fit.
What's interesting, sociologically or whatever, I see more old folks biking than I do kids.
They've got more time.
That's a good answer. You know, as kids, we were free-range kids. You got
Yeah.
on your bike in the morning and you were gone
Yeah.
for the rest of the day. I don't know what else. Kids are in front of their computers too much or something.
You can't do that on a bike.
I guess not.
But the great thing is you'll be able to go from Mendon Ponds Park to Motion Junction.
That's
Yeah,
so
that would be
cool.
delightful.
That's so cool.
That's huge.
How is Motion Junction? Someone asked me if they have the pad, whatever, the pad that it's supposed to be on.
What is it? It's like a rubbery.
Is it done, Karen? No.
Mm-mm.
Is that what you asked?
No, it's not in yet.
I'm sorry?
Is that what you asked if it was done?
Yeah,
Or I should-
that had been,
No, that won't be till spring.
it will.
We are in a series of strategical moves intentionally. We put that off intentionally so that we could apply for a grant for that piece of it to help with financing some other holes that exist in the project. And it was a combination of that and also weather. Temperature has to be at least 50 degrees in order
Yes, the
for it to
set,
cure
wasn't it?
properly.
Yes, I understood that. That's what I'm wondering.
Is that what's in those big bags out there by the buildings?
No, that's the rubberized mulch for the new pirate ship over at Pirate Playground, Pirate Ship Playground.
And when is that going in? Is that, we got that
This
yet?
week, that's here. They're gonna start work on it. That'll be a couple of weeks, but, yeah. Right now the ground's a little bit wet. Just hopefully later this week it'll get drying and then they can start digging.
So for the schedule for the remainder of the year, it seems like November 2nd is probably one where we can fit something else in. But I already have a blank draft for next year that you and I can start looking at for topics
Mhm.
on the schedule.
I would
And
suggest on that date, by that time, I would anticipate the town board will have adopted the 2022 budget.
Yeah.
The CIC should look at those items that relate to them and their groups as part of the 22 budget and get a jump start.
so like the committee budgets and stuff.
Mhm.
Yeah, that sounds right. Maybe ahead of time I can just send the budget out and everybody can, I don't know, maybe I'll tell page numbers before everything is.
Yeah. The other thing is that we could touch base on, by that point, I'm hoping to have the draft language, I'm working on it now, for the Uptown Business Improvement District, the Uptown bid. I've got most of the legalese done on that, but I'm working on the district plan that's required. Telling the story of how we got to this point.
All we had on our topic was strategic planning, but again, but for next year, we've got 5 goals, right? So if we focus on those and we visit them twice, that's 10 months right there.
Sure.
But I didn't really get the feeling that any of them need new project teams.
I'm pretty much ongoing.
I mean, there are things we've been working on already, but, you know, we can think about that when we're writing the resolution.
Yeah, there may be opportunity for a new team.
Maybe I should open it up. Wow. I'm sorry, was someone on the Zoom?
Oof.
Oksana, were you gonna say something?
I can hardly hear you guys.
Okay, sorry, I thought I heard someone say something. I just wanted to make sure I didn't miss something.
No, I'm wondering about the RSM lakefront. What is happening with that, if anything?
Who was that? Oksana? Who asked that?
Oksana.
Oh,
Oksana.
Hi, Oksana. How are you?
Good, how are you, Shauna?
Good. Yeah, that we are actually going to be working with the two individuals from RSM. Doug and I are going to sit down and look over their proposal and look through our
Why don't you start, they probably don't know what happened
last week that okay. So they sent a letter asking to be put on the town board and kind of reopen the project. And along with a sketch plan. And we need to do some internal review before we put that on the town board in October. So that's going to be on hold probably till at least November.
Yeah, I think the specific letter of request that came in was requesting bonus density and a whole variety
A
of
lot of
things.
different things.
But I think that the application, obviously, it's not even a complete application. They've got so much work to do, and they're thinking that, I think they're inaccurately thinking about a number of things. They're also not taking into account the NRI. They're not taking into account the new conservation subdivision regulations, and maybe we can get the SBO district in place before they come along with that. So, yeah, there's a lot of work to do there. So.
The likelihood that it will be reconfigured, I would say, is strong.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think that truthfully, I think that we're miles apart. I think there's a very good likelihood that this is going to be a protracted battle back and forth where they think that they're going to be able to do something and they're probably not going to be able to do it. I wouldn't at all be surprised if they just try to move forward with their already approved plan.
Yeah.
So does that mean they're sort of like hijacking our purchase because they won't sell to the town unless they get all of the upland new density and code revisions and all that? Is that true?
There's an element to that, I would say, that is along those lines, Oksana, but there's a number of other factors there also. Number one is the town had a 2-year option to purchase, and the town has not exercised that option, and that option is coming up on expiration. So, at that point, that whole thing goes away because the town board has not exercised that option. So, that's one piece of it that I guess I would say. Number two is the piece of the purchase of the lakefront with the rest of the development. Yes, I mean, if the town purchases that lakefront and makes that a park, that changes their approved plan substantially. So then they basically have to go back to the drawing board. So it's definitely connected, yes.
When we paid them for the option,
Mm-hmm.
So if we ask the town board to go ahead and buy that land now, I mean, when does the option end? At the end of the year?
Yeah, I want to say it's the end of the year. I'd have to double check the actual language, but I want to say it's around the end of the year, yes. It was a 2-year option.
Okay, so why can't we exercise that option if we petition the board, to actually do that? I mean, can RSM stop us?
Oh, sure, they can, absolutely. There has to be a willing seller. Absolutely, they could stop it. But I mean, I can't exercise the option, obviously, unless the town board directs me to exercise the option.
Okay, so this is October.
Mhm.
So we still have 3 months.
Yeah, I'd have to look at the exact dates on it, but there's at least 3 to 6 months, I would say, generally speaking. I want to say the option was somewhere around the beginning of 2020 is when it was put in place, approximately.
Well, okay, so still, if the town board wants to exercise the option, then we can just go ahead and purchase it, or we have to wait for discussions about the upland. That's
So-
what I want to know.
Okay, so the option agreement is actually on the website and it spells it all out. It's under the lakefront land acquisition page of the website, and the actual option agreement is there. The option agreement calls for an agreement, basically, it says that the town or basically the town, at any time in the 2 years, could exercise the option to purchase the property, at which point in time it would initiate the appraisal sequence to determine the value of the land, and then there would be an average of the 2 appraisals. At that point, the town could move forward essentially with that purchase. Could the seller stop the purchase? Absolutely. Could the buyer stop the purchase? Absolutely. But it gives the town basically the first right of refusal if they were to try to sell it to someone else, and gives the town it gives an agreement between the seller and the town on the mechanism and how it would go forward if the town were to exercise. But that's a big if. I don't think that there's the political will of the town board to exercise the option, at least not what I'm hearing at this point.
It expires on September 30th of 2022.
Okay, so we have almost another year.
September 30th.
It was December of last year that they signed it.
Well, how can we get the town board to be interested in going ahead? I mean, you know what? This is the last piece of lakefront property, and it doesn't even have to be a park, but what it needs is protection. There's so much wildlife over there. People love, when they're kayaking or canoeing, stopping in that cove. I mean, does the town board even know? I mean, have they even seen it? But
Yes,
I don't know.
I answer all those questions. Most all of the town board members have walked it. Most all the town board members have looked at it. We've had many, many, many meetings where we've discussed it. But again, it's ultimately the town board gets to make those decisions, those 5 individuals. And you can certainly talk to those 5 individuals, but I don't hear a consensus coming from the town board to move forward with that.
Well, would they rather it become another little marina there? That's the option. That's what's going to happen if they, don't even discuss it and then vote on it to purchase it. It's just very frustrating.
Yeah, there's been a lot of conversation. I mean, for years, we've been having conversations. I mean, I can tell you, even the end of 2019, I was having conversations with the Mancinis and the town board about all of this. I mean, this has been a long, long process, even to get to the point of the option. But whether or not there is the will or the consensus of the board,
Thank you.
I really don't know, Oksana. But, at this point, what I keep hearing is, you know, that there probably isn't.
Well, and according to, you know, to the budget plan for that property, we wouldn't have to tax the residents at all because there is money available, right?
Correct, correct. Between the open space fund and the grant money that was available through the Canandaigua Lake Watershed Council, that could be acquired, that property acquisition could take place using basically existing savings and grant money with no taxation at all.
Okay.
Sounds like a no-brainer to me, but
No kidding.
So what would it take to get the town board to push forward on it? Someone coming to the town board and talking about it and,
No, I mean, lobbying your elected officials. I mean, that's essentially what it amounts
Yeah.
to.
well, what can the CIC do about it? I mean, if we're discussing it now and we have a recommendation, we are an advisory committee. Can we develop some kind of a, you know, an instrument, a letter, whatever, to, you know, if we agree that this is a good option for the town and we recommend that they move forward? I mean, that's what we're here for, is to advise the town board and, you know, all of the things that we've been doing. So is that a possibility for us?
Group, make a motion. Have a second, and your committee. They can do it, make a motion, have a second, have a vote, have some discussion, deliberation, generate a resolution or a motion, and reflecting in the minutes, and we can forward it on.
would it be able to go on this month's, agenda?
It wouldn't be a resolution, it would
No.
be,
A discussion.
you know, the discussion took place. I mean, so the agenda deadline is this Friday, so if there was something that was done today relative to this, you know, we can certainly reflect that. There is a CIC section of the agenda, CIC report, you know, so that can certainly be included in that the CIC had this discussion.
But someone from the CIC would have to be there to start the discussion.
Somebody could, but wouldn't have to, no. Wouldn't put it on the agenda.
Are we saying that we have a quorum then? That we can move a resolution here?
You have a quorum.
I was always doubtful what our quorum was. I never really thought that we had a quorum, but if we make a resolution now, do we have a quorum?
I believe so, yes.
There's
All right.
7 members officially here without staff.
Well, I don't know enough about this project to.
I'm thinking we're rushing into it. I don't know the cost, I don't know the acreage, I don't know the frontage, I don't know how it would be proposed to be used. I will use a generous word, it's terrible lake frontage to try and jam in there between German Brothers and the rest of the residential thing. You know, there may be better use of park and rec money or whatever kind of money we've got. Just to rush in to protect it would be nice, but I don't think it, perhaps, I think we need to know a hell of a lot more, as Sal suggested. I mean, I'd love to have more lake access, but this may not be the parcel.
So I would encourage everybody to go to the website, because there's no information that I can provide you that's not on the website.
Yeah, so everything you need is
We
there.
can
If you
certainly
go to the
talk about
website.
this, but if you go to the website
Yep.
and on this tab
It's
called Lakefront Land Acquisition under Projects.
You can find everything there.
Actually, why don't you go all the way to the top so everybody can see this? So if you go to the
Okay.
Projects.
homepage, and then you're on the homepage, click on the word projects right at the top,
Yep.
Brings you to this page.
okay? And then,
It
so
looks a
then,
little funny because the screen's small, but
and then scroll down. And then Lakefront Land Acquisition, so click on that.
Okay, all right.
All right, and then, so this, the Lakefront Land Acquisition is all the stuff relative to both Tishner Point and to this property, so scroll down. Here's all the information relative to 3950 County Road 16. This has got everything. This has got subdivision plans. This has got even resident that we had our meeting with residents of Lakewood Meadows that was recorded and put on here. the Watershed Council resolution encouraging the town board to exercise the option and move forward with this. This is all on here. So now if you scroll back up, Sarah, there's actually the PowerPoint presentation. It's right towards the top. Where's that? Right there. So there's both the recording of it, as well as this PDF. Go ahead and open that. So this is the whole presentation that I did to the town board on the acquisition of both parcels. And there's a whole huge section on 3950 County Road 16, and it shows, you know, the parcel and what it may look like and the cost. And Sarah, if you just scroll through it, I'm not suggesting that we keep going. I'm not suggesting we go through this right now, but I just want to show you where this information is. Keep going. Wait, go back. Okay, so go up a little bit more. Just a little bit more. Okay, yeah, so right here, so page 41 is where it starts, 42. So this is the 3950, so it's 485 feet of shoreline. Here you can see it's approximately 4 acres with a connection piece to Lakewood Meadows. And so then go to the next page here, and so then you have all the detail and kind of where it's at and photos. You've got the next page, I think, actually, which shows we were breaking apart, part of it being used for recreation and part of it being used for open space preservation. You can see some of the details there, and then there's photos and all kinds of stuff associated with it and what it looks like. And then it even has, I think, a couple of pages down a little bit farther, like next page, shows like what we could do with a floating dock and where we could put that for the recreation usage of it, and, you know, all that type of stuff, even costs associated. There's a finance page here, I think it's the next page, that actually shows the total cost,
That's really
closing cost, yada, yada, yada.
detailed. That's
So
great.
that's all there.
Really, though, the discussion also needs to have someone from the Parks Department. And I don't feel qualified to do that, but it should be either Mark or Lindsay participating in that.
Yeah, that's in here. That's all in here. Parking and traffic is all included in this presentation. So showing the parking lot up on the other one.
Sarah, could we put this item on our agenda for our next meeting and be prepared, maybe ask someone from Parks and Rec to be there to guide us and see what their thoughts are. And then it would give all of our members a chance in the next couple of weeks to review everything, and we could start talking about it, because we need to do that.
Can I suggest we talk about it on December 7th? That's when we're having a Parks and Rec recap.
Okay, sure. That would be.
Sarah, that's too late. Sarah, that's too late.
Too late.
Why can't we change our schedule so that we can talk about it next meeting?
I think.
So maybe.
I mean, this has been dragging on and on a whole year already.
Why don't we talk about it?
Let's talk about it with Park and Rec discussion in December.
Well, I
we
mean,
have
the Parks and Rec
November-
committee doesn't even meet before your next meeting. I mean, if you're
Right,
talking about
we don't
somebody
meet
from Parks
until
and
the
Rec
end of the
committee.
month, but that's going to be with MRB about the uplands.
I don't know.
Ononda.
Around the buildings.
So it still sounds like it might be best to wait till November when the Parks and Rec committee, or when the Parks committee meets. I mean, we can change the November schedule around. I mean, the late November meeting on November 16th was gonna be talking about water quality. We could use that date for the parks to come and talk. They will have already had their October meeting by then.
However, the town board always has privilege of the floor. And
Right.
you can hook up via Zoom and you can raise your hand during the privilege of the floor. and you can initiate a conversation about this piece of property and let them be prepared that there's going to be some additional communication and perhaps pressure put on them.
Well, also the town manager in his report could also mention that the CIC is now deliberating, okay, regarding RSM open space. You know, there's lots of ways that you can get their attention. I think that
I don't think you're hearing me. There's not a month that goes by that I'm not discussing this property with the board, and there's not the political will to move it forward.
Right, and I believe it
Especially
needs
election
someone
time.
from the floor bringing it up, because as much as I love Doug, I don't believe he has as much influence as he would like to think he has.
Well, we're not talking about influence here right now. What we're talking about is heads up. Heads up, town board. We're really getting into this, and we're going to have our own review, and we're going to be send you some kind of an advisory report regarding this. That's how I see it, but you know, that's how I see our role as a CIC.
Well, frankly, Joyce, I see our role as individual town residents. And as an individual town resident, I get up there on a regular basis and bring up something, and I say I'm a member of some committees, but I'm not representing those committees. I'm representing my viewpoint. And I think that has more impact on town board members when you say it as your viewpoint than saying, well, I'm on a committee and we talked about this. I don't think they want to hear that. I think they want to know what you want.
So I still think we need to discuss this at our next meeting and not wait. I mean, Parks and Rec, when are they having their meeting? I've been trying to find this out. When is it?
Parks and Rec are meeting on the 27th of the month.
Okay, so,
But you understand, there's nothing on the agenda to talk about this property because MRB will be there discussing
I see.
their work on the uplands at Ononda. I just looked at it this morning, so that's all. Hasn't left my mind yet.
So if the Parks and Rec put it on their agenda for their November meeting, by the time they come to us then in December, you could have had that discussion prior to the December meeting here, prior to the CIC meeting on December 7th. Is that what could happen, Karen?
I think I will email Mark and Lindsay today about the discussion that we're having here. And then I'm going to let them take it over because frankly, I'm overwhelmed with the things I'm doing. and ultimately they're the two people that they're the leaders of the Parks and Rec team, and they need to embrace it and start talking about it.
Sounds good.
And I'll do that. I won't be home until later this afternoon, but I'll send an email to them both.
Can I go get Gary?
Who?
Gary, bring him back in.
Why did he leave?
He didn't want to be here for that discussion. He excused himself.
Oh, just the town board.
Yeah.
member.
Well, I don't get it.
I don't either. I think that tells you an answer right there.
I am fervently in favor of more lake access, but I think we ought to take a long, I don't care if the money is free from somewhere else, it's still, is it money well spent? When you drop back and see, we're not saving any wildlife buying that little patch of land, and we're not providing good access to the lake, in my opinion. Might be a nice.
Well,
I think
in the
we-
meantime,
Go ahead.
in the meantime, can we actually, just study this project on the website so that we're ready for whenever a meeting is going to be held?
Sure.
That's reasonable.
Okay,
And everybody knows how to find it.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, thank you.
On that page also, there's all the stuff about, like, all the meetings where they talked about it too, so you can read it, watch
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Et cetera. Yeah, that's right. Anything you wanna know is already on there. There's a lot of information, but it's all on there. Okay, so I think we're still talking about the Auburn Trail, and we'll discuss Middle Chester Road on October 19th. November 2nd,
Okay,
take a look at the budget for next year. Like Doug said, it's likely to already have been adopted by then. And each of you who sit on other committees can discuss or take back to your own committees, you know, talk about what's coming up for next year. The budget's on the website, again, on that same page on the website that says projects. There's a link to the budget. It's the very first item in the top left. The preliminary budget is up there right now. So you can take a look at it and, you know, scroll through to find what's on there for your individual committees and stuff. And then, let me open that schedule back up.
We were also gonna add the Uptown bid to the,
Yes,
to the
thank you.
second.
I forgot about that. Yep, on the second, we'll get an update from Doug on the Uptown bid project. And then we'll stick with water quality on the November 16th, and then now the December 7th Parks and Rec recap will also have a special discussion on the RSM property.
For the water quality, we should probably ask Kevin.
Yeah, that was
We have
kind
a
of,
new project that we're doing, so, over at Piercebrook
Piercebrook.
subdivision. There's
yeah,
a water quality improvement project, it's one of the 9 identified ones, so he could get an update on that.
yeah, that's kind of on my mental list. It's not written, but it should be to invite him to come. And then for the last meeting of the year, we have on there the NRI
Implementation update.
project, I'm sorry, plan.
I think that should also include not only the NRI, but the open space, because ECB is directly responsible for the implementation of the goals and strategies for the open space policy. I'd like to hear, you know, what's going on there.
Do you want to update everybody on the SVO, since that's going to be on the agenda to set a public hearing? Or Sean?
Yeah. Right.
Sure. Yeah, we, yesterday, we are moving forward the SVO, which is the scenic, what do we call it, viewshed overlay district, which will be, over basically, if you look at the map here, the lands, the purple, mostly, well, all of the RLD and a lot of the SR1 districts will be given an extra layer of protection, basically is what it is, at the purview of the planning board. It's actually very simple, easy to understand, I think, document. It's only 2 pages.
It'll be included with the agenda item.
Absolutely, yeah. So we're gonna be moving that forward to the planning, or the town board in October.
So we have to read all 560 pages of everything.
I could actually send that to you if you'd like to take a look.
Okay, so what about the ridge line? Where's that? What's the disposition of that?
You want me to take that?
Yeah,
So the consensus was Joyce, that, and I met with the ordinance committee multiple times now on this issue, that they opted to do the scenic view shed law. It really relates to subdivision, a minimum of 1 acres, and that they felt like that at this point, that was going to be the direction that they were going to go, including, the ridge lines would not be a separate standalone document. It would be, this scenic view shed overlay would encompass a lot of the ridge lines based on the topography as this has been mapped out on the land visible from Canandaigua Lake that would offer the same level of protection. It also requires that the planning board shall consider the ridge line and shoreline protection guidelines, and that they may require them. Essentially, it is spelled out in this language for this SBO district.
Mhm.
Everything here?
Too much to think about.
We've got a lot done. If the committee would like to see that, I can send it along and via email today.
That'd be great.
Okay.
Yeah.
It only pertains to the area south of 522.
Right. That's, yeah, a good caveat.
Okay. I think that covers it for today, and some.
Yeah.
I usually roll.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, we'll talk to you guys next time.
All right.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Good day, everyone.
You too.
Take care.